"I think your birthmark matches mine," Emily said, gesturing toward my husband's shoulder as we sat around our pool. "That's so weird. Same shape, same spot." There was a strange pause, so brief I almost missed it, before my husband Ryan laughed and casually pulled his t-shirt back up. "Huh, what are the odds?" But something in their shared glance sent ice water coursing through my veins. I'd been married to Ryan for 6 years, and I'd never once thought the small crescent moon on his shoulder was anything but a birthmark. Yet here was Emily, my best friend since college, claiming to have an identical mark. That night, while Ryan showered, I opened his phone using the passcode I'd known for years. His text history with Emily had been methodically deleted, unlike his messages with everyone else. The digital void screamed louder than any evidence could have. With trembling hands, I opened Instagram and searched for tattoo shops in our city, scrolling through thousands of posts until my thumb froze over an image from 2 years ago. There they were, Ryan and Emily sitting together in black and white, backs to the camera, twin crescent moon tattoos fresh on their shoulders. The caption read, "Matching moons for special lovers. Freiks secretink, forbidden love." My throat closed as bile rose. The bathroom door opened, steam billowing out as Ryan emerged, towel around his waist, the birthmark I'd traced countless times now transformed into something sinister, a permanent marker of betrayal inked into his skin, matching the one on my best friend's shoulder. "Have a good shower?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm as I held up the phone displaying the damning evidence. "Because I've been having a very educational evening about crescent moon tattoos and what they symbolize." The color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might faint. How do you begin to process that the two people closest to you have branded their betrayal permanently onto their bodies, wearing it in plain sight while you remained oblivious all this time? It took 3 days after the pool incident for me to work up the courage to confront them, 3 days of excruciating pretense. I smiled through dinner with Ryan, laughed at his jokes, even made love with him once, all while the image of that tattoo burned in my mind. I texted normally with Emily, planning our monthly girls' night as if my world hadn't shattered. I needed to be strategic. I needed irrefutable evidence beyond an Instagram post that could potentially be explained away. So I waited until Ryan left for his Thursday golf game, a standing appointment that now filled me with suspicion, and drove to Emily's condo across town. She answered the door in yoga pants and a tank top, surprise registering on her face. "Megan, what are you doing here? Everything okay?" "Actually, no." I stepped inside without waiting for invitation. "I need to see your shoulder." Her hand instinctively moved to cover the spot where I'd seen the mark at the pool. "What? Why?" "Because I think you and my husband have matching tattoos, and I'd like you to explain why." The color drained from her face, her typical quick-witted responses nowhere to be found. In their place was naked panic, then resignation. "Megan, it's not—" "Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't say it's not what I think. Show me your shoulder." Slowly, reluctantly, she pulled her tank top strap aside, revealing the crescent moon tattoo, identical to the one on Ryan's shoulder, identical to the one in the Instagram post I'd found. "How long?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears, calm despite the earthquake demolishing my internal landscape. Emily's eyes filled with tears. 2 years on and off. 2 years. Half of my marriage. While I'd been confiding in Emily about Ryan's recent emotional distance, while I'd been planning couples trips together, while I'd been thinking about starting a family, they had been sneaking behind my back, marking their bodies with permanent symbols of their betrayal. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, a question without rational answer, but one I needed to voice regardless. "It ended 3 months ago," she said instead of answering directly. "For good. We both realized how wrong it was, what we were doing to you. But not wrong enough to come clean. Not wrong enough to let me make informed decisions about my marriage." The calm was beginning to fracture, anger seeping through the cracks. Not wrong enough to avoid getting permanent matching tattoos. She flinched at my raised voice. "The tattoos were stupid. We were drunk. It was after that industry conference in Chicago when Ryan came with me as my +1. The conference I'd been originally invited to but couldn't attend because of work deadlines. The conference where Emily had suggested Ryan come instead since it would be a shame to waste the hotel room. The pieces were falling into devastating place. "Does anyone else know?" I asked, suddenly wondering if I'd been the only fool in our social circle. "No one," she insisted. "We were careful." Careful except for permanently marking their bodies with matching symbols. Careful except for documenting it on Instagram. Careful except for slipping up at a pool party and revealing everything through a careless comment. "I want to see your phone," I said. "And don't tell me you've deleted everything, because I know there are recovery tools." For a moment, I thought she might refuse. Then she went to get her phone, unlocked it, and handed it to me without protest. As I had suspected, their text history had been recently cleared, much like on Ryan's phone, but Emily hadn't been thorough enough to clear her photo library. Hidden in an encrypted folder, the password for which was, predictably, Moon, were dozens of images, Ryan and Emily together in hotel rooms, intimate moments never meant for my eyes, selfies with those damned matching tattoos prominently displayed. Each swipe of my finger revealed another dagger to my heart. There they were in Chicago, in a cabin I recognized from a weekend when Ryan had claimed to be on a fishing trip, in Emily's condo, on furniture I had helped her select. "I think I'm going to be sick," I said, the nausea finally overtaking the numbness. I barely made it to her bathroom before emptying the contents of my stomach, heaving until nothing remained but bitter bile. When I emerged, ashen and trembling, Emily was sitting on her couch, face in her hands. "I'll never forgive myself," she whispered. "That makes two of us," I replied, my voice hoarse from retching. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need the truth. Not what you think will hurt me least, but the actual truth. Did you sleep with him in our bed? In my home?" She couldn't meet my eyes. "Once, when you were visiting your sister after her surgery." Of all the betrayals, this one hit differently. The violation of my private space, my sanctuary. I had brought Emily soup when she was sick, had listened to her cry over failed relationships, had stood beside her at her father's funeral, and she had repaid that decade of friendship by sleeping with my husband in my own bed. "I'm going to leave now," I said, a strange calm returning as shock reasserted itself. "I'd like you to call Ryan. Tell him to meet you here. Tell him it's urgent. Don't tell him I know or that I'm here." Her eyes widened. "Megan, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to sit in my car down the street and watch my husband arrive at his mistress's house in the middle of a Thursday when he's supposed to be golfing. And then I'm going to make some decisions about the rest of my life." The drive home from Emily's condo passed in a haze of dissociation. Traffic lights, stop signs, and turn signals navigated by muscle memory, while my conscious mind struggled to process the magnitude of the betrayal I'd uncovered. Ryan and I had met through Emily, ironically enough. She'd invited me to a housewarming party 6 years ago, insisting her new neighbor was totally your type. Smart, funny, not intimidated by successful women. She'd been right. Ryan and I had connected instantly over shared interests in historical fiction, hiking, and terrible 90s action movies. Our courtship had been a whirlwind, dating for 10 months before he proposed during a sunset hike in Sedona. We'd married 6 months later in a ceremony where Emily had stood beside me as maid of honor, had helped me into my dress, had whispered, "You found the good one," before I walked down the aisle. Had the affair been happening even then? Had Emily's enthusiastic matchmaking been motivated by something darker, keeping her friend's husband accessible? The timeline suggested their affair had begun 4 years into my marriage, but now I questioned everything, examined every memory for hidden meanings I might have missed. The early years of our marriage had been genuinely happy, I believed. We'd navigated career changes, Ryan transitioning from corporate law to starting his own practice, me advancing to creative director at my advertising agency. We'd purchased our house, adopted our dog Luna, traveled to 8 countries together. We'd discussed children recently, tentatively planning to try within the next year. Had all of that been a lie, or had our real marriage existed alongside his affair with my best friend, compartmentalized in his mind, separate realities that somehow didn't conflict? As I pulled into our driveway, I realized I'd driven home automatically instead of waiting outside Emily's condo as I'd planned. The confrontation would have to wait. Perhaps that was better anyway. I needed time to think, to plan my approach without the immediate emotional storm clouding my judgment. Inside our house, our beautiful craftsman with the kitchen we'd renovated together and the backyard where we hosted summer barbecues, I moved like a ghost through rooms suddenly unfamiliar. The framed photos on the walls seemed to mock me, Ryan and me on our honeymoon in Greece, the group shot from last New Year's Eve with Emily standing on Ryan's other side, the professional portrait we'd had taken for our 5th anniversary just last year. Had they been together then? The timeline suggested yes. While I'd been planning our anniversary celebration, ordering his favorite cake, writing heartfelt vows to renew, had he been planning rendezvous with Emily? Had they laughed about deceiving me? I found myself in our bedroom staring at the bed Emily had confessed to defiling. The urge to strip the sheets, to burn the mattress, to fumigate the entire room was nearly overwhelming. Instead, I methodically began packing a suitcase. Enough clothes for a week, essential toiletries, important documents. As I reached for my passport in the bedside drawer, my hand brushed against a small velvet pouch I didn't recognize. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a crescent moon pendant, identical in shape to the tattoos. The gift tag simply read, "For the moon of my life," without signature, a reference to Game of Thrones, one of Emily's favorite shows that Ryan had always claimed to find overrated when watching with me. I sank to the floor, the necklace dangling from my fingers, as the final pieces clicked into place. Ryan's sudden interest in Emily's TV recommendations, his unexplained knowledge of restaurants across town near her condo, the inside jokes I'd attributed to their growing friendship through me. My phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. "Change of plans, skipping golf today, meeting with potential new client, home for dinner, love you." Another lie, delivered so easily it was chilling. Was he already with Emily? Had my request to call him sent them into crisis management mode? I needed to be strategic. Confronting them together had been an impulse born of shock and pain, but perhaps there was wisdom in a different approach. I needed to understand the full scope of the deception before making life-altering decisions based on partial information. With renewed purpose, I completed my packing, made a reservation at a hotel across town, and left a single item on Ryan's pillow, the crescent moon necklace, tag still attached. No note, no explanation, just the evidence of a gift that was never meant for me. Let him wonder, let him panic, let him experience even a fraction of the disorientation and fear that had been my constant companions since that casual comment by the pool upended my entire reality. When Ryan returned home that evening, I was waiting in the living room. I'd come back from the hotel after confirming through our security camera app that he'd returned. The moon necklace lay on the coffee table between us, my silent opening statement. "Megan," his voice held cautious neutrality. "I was worried. You weren't answering your phone." "I was busy." I met his gaze steadily, looking at tattoo parlor Instagram accounts. The slight flinch would have been imperceptible if I hadn't been watching for it. His hand unconsciously moved toward his shoulder, the location of the crescent moon he'd passed off as a birthmark for years. "I'm not sure what you're talking about," he attempted, but his eyes kept darting to the necklace on the table. "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "I've seen the tattoo shop post. I've talked to Emily. I've seen the photos." I kept my voice level with effort. "I know about the 2-year affair with my best friend. I know about the matching tattoos. I know about the cabin trips and hotel rooms. I know you slept with her in our bed when I was helping my sister recover from surgery." With each statement, he seemed to physically diminish, shoulders curving inward as the possibility of denial evaporated. When I finished, silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of exposed deception. "I don't know what to say," he finally offered, voice barely above a whisper. That's interesting because I have several questions that require answers. I unfolded the list I'd prepared at the hotel, a strategy to keep myself focused during this conversation. First, was there anyone else, or was Emily special? Just Emily. He swallowed visibly. It wasn't planned. You never meant for me to find out, I interrupted. That's different from never meaning for it to happen. Second question, does anyone else know? Friends, colleagues, family? He shook his head. No one. We were careful. Careful, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Careful enough to get matching permanent tattoos. Careful enough to document them on social media. That was stupid, he admitted. We were drunk. It was impulsive. An affair lasting 2 years isn't impulsive, Ryan. It's a series of thousands of deliberate choices. I consulted my list again. Third question, why did it end 3 months ago? Surprise flickered across his features. Perhaps that I knew this specific detail, or perhaps that I was interrogating the ending rather than the beginning. We both realized how wrong it was, he said after a pause that lasted too long. What we were doing to you, the guilt became too much. Yet neither of you felt guilty enough to tell me the truth, to let me make informed decisions about my marriage and my friendships. The calm I'd maintained began cracking, emotion bleeding through. Instead, you both continued pretending everything was normal. Family dinners, movie nights, planning our vacation next month, all while knowing what you'd done. We didn't want to hurt you, he offered weakly. Hurt me? My composure shattered completely. You've been sleeping with my best friend for 2 years. You marked your bodies with matching symbols of your betrayal. You had her in our bed. My voice broke on the last words, the violation of that particular boundary still cutting deepest. Ryan made a move as if to approach me, but I held up my hand, stopping him. Don't you dare try to comfort me for the pain you caused. He sank back into his chair, eyes fixed on the floor. What happens now? The question hung between us, so enormous it seemed impossible to answer in the moment. What did happen after discovering the 2 people you trusted most had systematically betrayed you for years? Now I need complete information, I said, regaining some composure. I need to understand exactly what's been happening in my marriage while I was operating with partial information. Then I'll decide what, if anything, remains worth saving. Over the next 2 hours, I conducted the most painful interview of my life, extracting details about their relationship timeline, the logistics of their deception, the extent of their physical and emotional involvement. Ryan answered each question directly, seemingly relieved to unburden himself after years of secrecy. The affair had indeed begun at the Chicago conference, alcohol lowering initial inhibitions, but not explaining the sustained deception that followed. They had coordinated schedules using a shared calendar disguised as a work project. They had established code words and signals for communicating when I was present. They had created elaborate systems to maintain their parallel relationship while preserving their respective places in my life. The mechanical precision of these revelations somehow hurt worse than the emotional betrayal, the calculated effort required to systematically deceive me while maintaining outward appearances of friendship and marriage. Last question, I said as midnight approached, emotional exhaustion weighing on every word. Do you love her? Ryan hesitated, then nodded almost imperceptibly. But I love you too, he added quickly. It's complicated. No, it's actually quite simple. I stood, physically unable to continue this conversation. You and Emily betrayed me in the most profound way possible. Whether that betrayal was motivated by love, lust, or simple opportunity doesn't change the outcome. What are you going to do? He asked, voice small and uncertain. Right now, I'm going back to my hotel. Tomorrow, I'm meeting with a divorce attorney to understand my options. After that, I shrugged, genuine uncertainty replacing the artificial composure I'd maintained through most of our conversation. After that, I don't know. I need to rebuild a life based on actual reality, rather than elaborate fiction. Please, Megan, we can work through this. People recover from affairs. We can get counseling. This wasn't just an affair, Ryan. This was systematic deception involving my best friend. This was bringing her into our home, into our bed. This was marking your bodies with permanent symbols of your relationship. I gathered my purse and the small overnight bag I'd brought. Maybe some marriages can recover from that level of betrayal. I don't know if ours can. More importantly, I don't know if I want it to. As I reached the door, one final question occurred to me. I turned back, finding Ryan still seated, looking smaller and more defeated than I'd ever seen him. "The crescent moon, what does it mean to you two? Why that symbol?" He looked up, surprise registering at this unexpected inquiry. It was the tattoo artist's suggestion, something about how we were each other's moon, reflecting light even when the other couldn't see it. The poetic sentiment twisted in my gut, another layer of intimate connection from which I had been deliberately excluded. Without another word, I walked out the door, closing it firmly on the marriage I had believed was real, but now understood had been partially fictional for years. The first weeks after discovery passed in a blur of practical arrangements and emotional devastation. My attorney advised immediate financial separation, new accounts, credit freezes, preliminary asset inventory, while psychological self-preservation demanded physical distance from both Ryan and Emily. I moved into a furnished short-term rental across town, my few hastily packed possessions looking pathetically inadequate in the neutral space. Every item from my real home carried emotional contamination. Gifts from Ryan now questioned for sincerity, household goods potentially present during their encounters, clothing worn while I unknowingly participated in elaborate deception. The legal proceedings began with mechanical precision, filing paperwork, documenting timelines, establishing temporary arrangements, while permanent dissolution progressed. Ryan offered minimal resistance, accepting proposed asset divisions with subdued cooperation that might have seemed admirable if not representing yet another way he was controlling our relationship's narrative. Most challenging was navigating the social aftermath. Our friend group extended far beyond Emily, incorporating colleagues, neighbors, and long-term connections who now required some explanation for our sudden separation. I opted for minimal disclosure. Ryan and I have separated due to infidelity issues, while deliberately omitting Emily's involvement unless directly questioned. This selective discretion wasn't protecting Emily, but preserving my own dignity. Having everyone know my husband and best friend had conducted a 2-year affair felt like extending their power to violate my privacy, turning private trauma into public spectacle. Some friends undoubtedly suspected given Emily's simultaneous disappearance from social gatherings, but most respected boundaries implied by my limited explanation. Ryan attempted communication regularly, texts expressing remorse, emails detailing therapy progress, voicemails requesting conversation about reconciliation possibilities. I maintained minimal contact, responding only to practical matters requiring immediate attention, deflecting emotional appeals with brief acknowledgement, but no engagement. Emily's attempts at contact proved more difficult to manage emotionally. Her messages oscillated between self-flagellating apologies and implicit requests for absolution, both serving her needs rather than mine. After her third tearful voicemail, I sent single-sentence response: "I need time and space without communication from you." When this boundary proved insufficient to prevent continued outreach, I blocked her number entirely. 6 weeks after discovery, I experienced what my therapist identified as trauma response collapse, the delayed emotional reaction following initial pragmatic functioning. For 3 days, I couldn't leave my bed except for absolute necessities, couldn't eat, couldn't concentrate on simple tasks, could only replay memories through new lens of knowledge, questioning every moment of my marriage and friendship for signs I should have recognized. Had the slight tension between Ryan and Emily at our anniversary dinner last year been sexual frustration rather than the minor disagreement about politics they'd claimed? Had Emily's increased interest in my work schedule been friendly concern or strategic information gathering for planning their encounters? Had Ryan's occasional emotional distance indicated compartmentalization stress rather than simple work preoccupation? The unanswerable nature of these questions created cyclical thought patterns that threatened to consume me entirely, My therapist recommended temporary medication to stabilize mood and sleep patterns while developing longer-term coping strategies. The suggestion initially triggered resistance, as if needing pharmaceutical support represented additional victory for those who had betrayed me. But pragmatic self-care eventually overcame prideful self-destruction. 2 months after discovery, I returned to our house for first substantial property division session. Ryan had temporarily relocated to facilitate this process, leaving me alone in space that simultaneously felt intimately familiar and disturbingly alien. Each room contained both genuine memories and newly discovered deceptions, layers of experience impossible to separate cleanly. In our bedroom, I found myself staring at the bed we had shared for 6 years, the mattress replaced according to my attorney's non-negotiable condition for entering the house. The new bedding couldn't erase knowledge of what had happened there, but provided minimal psychological buffer necessary for completing practical tasks. Most difficult were items carrying emotional rather than monetary value: wedding photos, travel souvenirs, gifts exchanged during significant milestones. Each required evaluation not just for material worth, but for psychological impact of either keeping or surrendering objects now containing contradictory meanings. Our photo albums proved particularly challenging. Visual documentation of relationship I had believed genuine, but now understood as partially performative. Had Ryan been thinking of Emily during anniversary celebration captured in these smiling images? Had he compared us, created mental hierarchies of preference, maintained internal scorecard invisible to me but informing his divided attention? 3 months after discovery, divorce proceedings progressed with surprising efficiency given emotional complexity involved. Ryan's continued compliance with proposed arrangements, whether motivated by guilt, desired expediency, or genuine remorse, removed practical obstacles that might have extended legal process unnecessarily. The most unexpected development came through indirect channels, mutual friend mentioning casually that Emily had apparently moved to Seattle for new job opportunity. The geographic distance provided strange relief, removing possibility of accidental encounters while shopping or dining, eliminating risk of seeing her car outside familiar locations, creating physical boundary that matched emotional separation already established. 4 months after discovery, I reached what my therapist identified as important milestone, the first day I didn't think about betrayal immediately upon waking. The realization came retrospectively, evening reflection noting absence of morning trauma cycle that had become so normalized I hadn't recognized its occasional disappearance as significant progress. This small victory didn't represent complete healing or final resolution, but indicated integration beginning to replace constant conscious processing. The betrayal was becoming part of my history rather than totalizing present experience, significant chapter rather than entire identity. 5 months after discovery, divorce finalized with anticlimactic signing ceremony. Electronic signatures exchanged without direct contact. Legal status changed through bureaucratic process rather than emotional catharsis. The official dissolution provided formal acknowledgement of reality already established through preceding months of separation. That evening, alone in an apartment I'd begun decorating with items containing no history from previous relationship, I experienced complex emotional response. Grief for genuine elements of marriage now officially ended, relief at formal conclusion of legal process, anxiety about undefined future, and underneath it all, unexpected sense of possibility previously obscured by constant trauma processing. For the first time since discovery, I allowed myself to consider future extending beyond immediate survival needs, career development unconstrained by relationship considerations, living arrangements reflecting personal preferences rather than compromise requirements, social connections based on genuine affinity rather than coupled convenience. The betrayal had irrevocably altered my understanding of trust, intimacy, and perception, damage that couldn't be undone through legal proceedings or temporal distance. But within that altered landscape, new growth had begun emerging, tentative, fragile, but genuinely present. Not healing that erased injury, but integration that acknowledged wound while refusing to be permanently defined by it. 6 months after discovery, I purchased condominium in neighborhood I'd always admired, but Ryan had considered pretentious. Modern building with clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows, and rooftop garden space. The decision represented first major life choice made entirely for myself, without accommodation or compromise for partners' preferences. The process of furnishing this space became unexpectedly therapeutic, each selection representing deliberate choice rather than inherited history or relationship compromise. From wall colors to furniture arrangement, every element reflected authentic personal preference rather than negotiated settlement between competing tastes. Most significant was bedroom creation, space containing no associations with previous relationship violations. New bed, different orientation, altered color scheme, physical manifestation of psychological boundary between past experience and present reality. The completed room became first location where uninterrupted sleep gradually returned without medication assistance. 7 months after discovery, I accepted promotion requiring increased travel. Professional opportunity previously complicated by marriage considerations now evaluated solely on career development merits. The expanded responsibilities provided both distraction from continued healing process and affirmation of identity, extending beyond relationship definition. During business trip to Chicago, I experienced unexpected emotional ambush. Hotel bar inadvertently resembling venue where Ryan and Emily's affair had begun during conference. The similarity triggered flashback response so intense I retreated to my room, canceling client dinner with hastily constructed excuse about migraine. The incident demonstrated healing's non-linear nature, progress punctuated by unexpected setbacks triggered through unpredictable associations. 8 months after discovery, I received handwritten letter from Ryan. First communication I didn't immediately file with my attorney since separation began. The message expressed neither reconciliation attempt nor self-justification, but simply acknowledgement of harm caused, and therapy insights developed through intensive treatment for compartmentalization tendencies. I've come to understand that my behavior reflected fundamental character deficiency rather than situational temptation, he wrote. The capacity to maintain separate psychological spaces while presenting consistent external persona allowed systematic deception without apparent cognitive dissonance. This pattern extended beyond our marriage, appearing in professional contexts and previous relationships in ways I'm only now recognizing with appropriate therapeutic guidance. The letter contained no request for response or relationship reconsideration, simply information offered without expectation. After careful consideration and consultation with my therapist, I chose not to reply, not from anger or punishment motivation, but recognition that continued communication served no constructive purpose in my healing process. 9 months after discovery, I began cautiously re-establishing social connections beyond necessary professional interactions. Coffee with former colleague, dinner with childhood friend visiting town, weekend hiking with neighbor from new building. Each interaction required vulnerability calibration, determining appropriate disclosure about recent history without allowing betrayal narrative to dominate new relationships. Most social reconnections occurred individually rather than through group activities where coupled status might create implicit pressure or unwelcome comparison. These measured interactions provided gradual exposure therapy for trust mechanisms damaged through betrayal experience, rebuilding capacity for relationship investment without naive vulnerability. 10 months after discovery, I experienced first genuinely interested reaction to male attention since separation began. The architect consulting on office renovation had asked about coffee after project meeting, casual invitation containing no pressure but clear intentionality. My immediate internal response, combination of interest, panic, and hypervigilance, revealed both healing progress and continuing trust challenges. After careful consideration, I accepted invitation with clear boundaries, weekday afternoon at public location, limited duration specified in advance, mutual professional connection providing context. The interaction progressed with surprising normalcy, conversation about design philosophies, travel experiences, and neighborhood restaurants without awkward disclosure pressure or betrayal shadowing. The experience didn't represent dramatic romantic reemergence, but simple human connection untainted by recent trauma. Significant accomplishment within healing journey, previously dominated by hypervigilance and withdrawal. More importantly, it demonstrated capacity for appropriate discernment rather than binary extremes of naive trust or paranoid suspicion. 11 months after discovery, I received unexpected email from Emily. First contact attempt since I'd blocked direct communication channels months earlier. The message had been routed through mutual friend with subject line indicating important health information requiring my attention. The content provided explanation for this boundary crossing. Emily had been diagnosed with cervical HPV requiring treatment, doctor recommending notification of recent sexual partners due to transmission possibilities predating symptom emergence. The information created immediate practical concern requiring medical consultation, but also triggered complex emotional response. Rage at additional potential harm beyond already established betrayal, anxiety about health implications both immediate and long-term, renewed violation sense through forced re-engagement with someone I'd explicitly established no contact boundary with. Medical testing ultimately confirmed no transmission had occurred in my case. Physical health uncompromised despite emotional damage inflicted. The experience highlighted additional betrayal dimension often overlooked in infidelity discussions. Physical risk exposure without informed consent, representing boundary violation beyond emotional deception. 12 months after discovery, full year since poolside comment had inadvertently revealed elaborate deception, I participated in ceremony my therapist had suggested, private ritual acknowledging anniversary without allowing date to trigger trauma response. The simple practice, writing detailed impact statement followed by controlled burning of document, provided symbolic representation of experience integration rather than denial or obsession. The ritual concluded with deliberate self-acknowledgement, recognition of survival capacity, resilience development, and personal growth emerging through trauma recovery process. Not toxic positivity suggesting betrayal represented disguised blessing, but realistic assessment of strength demonstrated through unwanted circumstance navigation. That evening, alone on my condominium rooftop garden, I watched sunset with strange sense of completion, not healing that erased injury, but integration that incorporated experience into continuing life journey without allowing it to dominate present reality or determine future possibilities. The matching tattoos that had revealed elaborate betrayal had permanently marked Ryan and Emily's bodies, visible symbols of secret connection maintained at my expense. But the experience had marked me too, invisible but equally indelible imprints on trust capacity, relationship expectations, and self-understanding. The difference lay in meaning assigned to these markings, limitation definitions or growth indicators, permanent damage or transformation catalysts. As night settled over the city, stars gradually appearing against darkened sky, I recognized anniversary not as victimization reminder, but milestone marking both survival and evolution. The year had contained immeasurable pain, but also unprecedented growth, forced reconstruction creating foundation potentially stronger than structure it replaced, not because betrayal offered hidden benefit, but because resilience emerged through recovery process demanding strength I hadn't known I possessed. 18 months after discovery, life had established new patterns reflecting authentic preferences rather than crisis response or relationship accommodation. My career had advanced through promotion, opportunity acceptance, and successful project completion. My living space had evolved from transitional refuge to genuine home through thoughtful customization. My social connections had expanded beyond necessary professional interactions to include meaningful friendships and casual acquaintances. Most significantly, my relationship with trust had developed nuanced complexity replacing previous binary understanding. Before betrayal, trust had represented automatic relationship default requiring dramatic violation to question. After initial discovery, trust had become nearly impossible vulnerability, too dangerous to extend in any significant measure. Through extended recovery process, trust had gradually evolved into calibrated assessment, Appropriate vulnerability extended incrementally based on demonstrated consistency rather than categorical assumption or reflexive withholding. This transformation manifested across multiple relationship dimensions, professional collaborations evaluated through demonstrated reliability rather than positioned authority, friendships developed through consistent behavior observation rather than immediate intimacy, potential romantic connections approached with appropriate boundary establishment rather than either naive openness or paranoid withdrawal. The most unexpected development emerged through continued therapy. Recognition that betrayal discovery had ultimately revealed truth, not just about Ryan and Emily's deception, but about relationship limitations I had accepted without questioning. The marriage I mourned had contained genuine elements worth grieving, but had also included significant compromise, communication limitations, and unacknowledged dissatisfactions I had normalized through accommodation rather than addressing directly. This insight didn't justify or minimize betrayal. Deception remained fundamentally unacceptable regardless of relationship quality, but provided important context for rebuilding process focusing on authentic needs rather than recreating previous arrangements with different participants. 20 months after discovery, I began dating with intentional approach, balancing appropriate caution with genuine openness. Rather than seeking immediate exclusive relationship or maintaining casual connections without vulnerability, I established middle path. Authentic emotional investment developed incrementally through demonstrated consistency rather than projected expectations or relationship labels. David, architectural consultant I'd had coffee with months earlier, became first person I dated with this balanced approach. Our relationship developed through thoughtful progression. Shared interests explored through public activities before private interactions, personal history discussed with appropriate vulnerability timing, physical intimacy established through explicit communication rather than assumption or expectation. Most importantly, our connection developed without betrayal-centered narrative dominating interactions. My experience with Ryan and Emily informed boundary establishment and communication patterns, but didn't define entire relationship identity or perspective. The betrayal represented significant chapter in my history, without constituting complete definition of who I was or what I expected from relationships. 24 months after discovery, marking 2 full years since poolside comment had revealed elaborate deception, I participated in final therapy session focused specifically on betrayal recovery. The appointment didn't represent complete therapeutic conclusion, but transition from trauma-specific processing to general personal development support. What would you identify as most significant change in your perspective since beginning this recovery process? My therapist asked during our session. After thoughtful consideration, I identified transformation most surprising even to myself. I've developed capacity to hold contradictory truths simultaneously without requiring resolution between them. Ryan caused immeasurable harm through systematic deception, and some elements of our relationship contained genuine value worth acknowledging. Emily betrayed fundamental friendship trust through sustained deception, and her absence represents genuine loss despite her actions. The betrayal created trauma requiring extensive recovery work, and that recovery process generated growth I might not have otherwise experienced. This capacity for complexity without contradiction, holding multiple truths without forcing artificial resolution between them, represented cognitive flexibility developed through necessity, but offering unexpected benefit extending beyond betrayal recovery. The ability to recognize situation nuance without minimizing harm or requiring categorical judgment provided framework for navigating complex human interactions across multiple contexts. 26 months after discovery, I encountered Ryan unexpectedly at industry event. First unplanned meeting since divorce finalization nearly 2 years earlier. The initial recognition generated physical reaction, adrenaline surge, momentary breathing difficulty, hyper-awareness of environmental details, but intensity remained manageable through grounding techniques developed during therapy. Our interaction maintained professional courtesy without forced intimacy or dramatic confrontation. Brief acknowledgement, minimal small talk, natural conversation conclusion. The encounter demonstrated significant healing progress, capacity to occupy same space without experiencing overwhelming emotional response or requiring extensive recovery period afterward. Most notable was observation without immediate emotional override, recognition that Ryan appeared simultaneously familiar and strange, person I had known intimately yet fundamentally misunderstood. The cognitive dissonance created momentary disorientation, but not destabilization. Discomfort acknowledged without allowing it to dominate entire experience. 28 months after discovery, relationship with David progressed to cohabitation discussion. Significant milestone approached with careful consideration rather than automatic progression or reactive avoidance. The conversation involved explicit communication about expectations, boundaries, and potential challenges based on previous experience, without allowing past betrayal to dictate present decisions. I want to be clear that my hesitation isn't about trust in you specifically, I explained during one of several discussions exploring this potential step. It's about understanding how cohabitation inherently changes relationship dynamics in ways that can obscure incremental changes until patterns become firmly established. This transparent communication about legitimate concerns based on previous experience demonstrated both personal growth and relationship health, capacity to identify specific vulnerabilities without generalizing past betrayal to current partnership. David's response reflected similar thoughtfulness. What specific arrangements would help you maintain appropriate boundaries and independence while sharing living space? Separate workspaces? Financial separation? Regular private time built into our schedules? The collaborative problem-solving approach, acknowledging concern legitimacy while developing specific strategies rather than either dismissing caution or accepting limitation as permanent, represented balanced response, supporting authentic connection without minimizing significant past experience. 30 months after discovery, I received wedding invitation from mutual friend who had maintained connections with both Ryan and me following divorce. The enclosed note acknowledged potential awkwardness, but expressed hope I might attend regardless of possible guest list overlap, explicit assurance that separate seating arrangements would be established if necessary. After careful consideration, I accepted invitation with David as my +1, decision representing neither avoidance motivated by lingering trauma nor forced interaction, demonstrating complete healing for others' benefit. The choice reflected authentic desire to celebrate friends' happiness while acknowledging potential discomfort requiring appropriate boundary management. The wedding itself provided unexpected closure opportunity. Ryan attended alone rather than with new partner, our brief interaction limited to polite acknowledgement without attempted conversation or elaborate avoidance. The normalcy of this limited engagement demonstrated healing integration, capacity to navigate social intersection without either dramatic confrontation or significant emotional disruption. Most powerful observation emerged through contrast between current reality and what might have been without betrayal discovery. Continued relationship built on fundamental deception rather than authentic connection based on complete information. The alternative timeline represented not just continued victimization, but opportunity cost. Relationships, experiences, and growth prevented through maintained illusion rather than confronted reality. 32 months after discovery, I noticed small crescent moon pendant in jewelry store window while shopping for birthday gift for my sister. The symbol that had once represented ultimate betrayal now registered as simple celestial image, without immediate traumatic association. Tangible evidence of healing integration rather than symptom avoidance. After momentary hesitation, I entered store and examined necklace closely, allowing memory acknowledgement without permitting emotional hijacking. The experience demonstrated sophisticated recovery rather than incomplete healing, capacity to encounter triggers without automatic trauma response activation. The most profound transformation emerged not through dramatic breakthrough but gradual perspective evolution. Betrayal experience integration into life narrative without allowing it to constitute defining characteristic or primary identity component. The matching tattoos that had revealed elaborate deception had irrevocably altered my understanding of trust, intimacy, and perception. But that alteration had ultimately created capacity for more authentic connection rather than permanent withdrawal or naive vulnerability repetition. As 3-year anniversary of discovery approached, I reflected on journey from devastation to integration, not healing that erased injury, but transformation that incorporated experience into continuing life journey. The process had been neither linear nor comprehensively conclusive, containing both significant progress and occasional setbacks, gradual growth and sudden insights, practical adjustments and philosophical reconsiderations. Most importantly, the experience had revealed resilience capacity I hadn't recognized until circumstance demanded its demonstration. Strength emerging not despite vulnerability, but through direct engagement with painful reality rather than comfortable illusion. Not because betrayal itself offered hidden benefit, but because recovery process required resources I might not have otherwise developed. 4 years after discovery, life had established patterns reflecting deliberate choices rather than crisis response or relationship accommodation. My career had advanced through leadership position acceptance at architectural firm specializing in sustainable urban development. My relationship with David had progressed to marriage based on authentic connection rather than social expectation or timeline pressure. My understanding of trust had evolved to balanced assessment, replacing previous binary extremes. The betrayal discovery that had initially shattered my understanding of my own life had gradually transformed from primarily traumatic experience to integrated narrative component, significant chapter within continuing story, rather than defining characteristic or totalizing identity. The matching tattoos that had revealed elaborate deception had permanently marked Ryan and Emily's bodies, but the experience had marked me too. Invisible but equally indelible imprints on trust capacity, relationship expectations, and self-understanding. Most significant wisdom emerged through recognition that betrayal's greatest damage extended beyond specific deception discovery to fundamental reality questioning. Uncertainty about perception reliability, memory accuracy, and judgment capacity created by discovering elaborate fiction where I had perceived authentic connection. The most disorienting aspect wasn't learning what Ryan and Emily had done, I explained during conversation with close friend who had provided consistent support throughout recovery process. It was realizing I couldn't trust my own experience of reality, that I had been living in carefully constructed fiction while believing I occupied genuine relationship. That fundamental disorientation created questioning that extended far beyond the specific betrayal to encompass basic trust in my own perception. This insight highlighted betrayal's unique harm, not just relationship violation, but reality distortion requiring comprehensive recalibration rather than isolated incident recovery. The healing process had necessarily addressed not just specific deception aftermath, but fundamental trust reconstruction, both interpersonal connections and basic reality perception. The wisdom gained through this challenging journey manifested across multiple dimensions. First, recognition that trust represents continuous assessment rather than permanent state, ongoing evaluation based on demonstrated consistency rather than categorical designation or relationship label. This understanding replaced previous binary approach, complete trust until dramatically violated, with nuanced discernment extending appropriate vulnerability incrementally through verified reliability. Second, acknowledgement that relationship authenticity requires consistent alignment between expressed values and demonstrated behavior rather than emotional intensity or commitment declarations. This perspective prioritized integration over compartmentalization, congruence over performance, and consistent behavior patterns over isolated gesture significance. Third, understanding that relationship communication extends beyond explicit verbal exchange to encompass behavioral patterns, boundary establishment, and information sharing practices. This awareness created attention to demonstrated priorities rather than exclusively focusing on stated intentions or expressed affection. Fourth, recognition that genuine intimacy requires vulnerability, extending beyond physical proximity or emotional intensity to include authentic self-disclosure and comprehensive information sharing. This perspective prioritized transparency about significant life dimensions rather than selective disclosure, creating illusion of complete openness. Most importantly, understanding that meaningful relationship requires foundation of informed consent, mutual agreement based on comprehensive information rather than partial disclosure or strategic revelation. This awareness prioritized each person's right to make relationship decisions with complete contextual understanding, rather than artificially limited information serving others' preferences. The betrayal permanently altered how I understand relationships, I observed during final therapy sessions, specifically addressing transformation rather than recovery. Not because I've become permanently suspicious or categorically untrusting, but because I've developed more sophisticated understanding of what genuine connection requires: alignment between stated values and demonstrated behavior, consistent integration rather than compartmentalization, and comprehensive information sharing supporting informed consent. This transformation extended beyond romantic relationships to encompass all significant connections, professional collaborations evaluated through demonstrated reliability rather than positioned authority or impressive credentials, friendships developed through behavioral consistency, observation rather than shared history length or interaction intensity, family relationships approached with boundary establishment rather than automatic obligation or role fulfillment. 5 years after discovery, I encountered Emily unexpectedly during business trip to Seattle, first direct contact since boundary establishment years earlier. The initial recognition generated physical response, adrenaline surge, momentary disorientation, heightened environmental awareness, but intensity remained manageable through grounding techniques practiced throughout recovery process. Our interaction maintained minimal civility without forced reconciliation narrative or dramatic confrontation, brief acknowledgement in hotel lobby, limited small talk about professional developments, natural conversation conclusion without personal disclosure or relationship discussion. Most significant observation emerged afterward: recognition that encounter had generated appropriate emotional response without creating significant disruption requiring extensive recovery period. The experience represented sophisticated healing integration rather than either symptom suppression or incomplete processing, capacity to encounter triggering individual without emotional regulation system overwhelm. 6 years after discovery, marking time period triple length of Ryan and Emily's affair, David and I welcomed our daughter, Sophia, transforming relationship yet again through shared parenthood experience. The profound connection with this small being generated both immeasurable joy and occasional vulnerability echoes. Momentary anxiety flashes about potential future betrayals or relationship disappointments she might experience throughout life. Rather than attempting elimination of these natural protective responses, I incorporated them into balanced perspective, reasonable caution informing appropriate guidance without allowing hypervigilance to restrict her developing autonomy or relationship exploration. The wisdom gained through painful experience provided framework for supporting her developing discernment without projecting specific trauma responses onto her unique journey. Most powerful transformation emerged through recognition that betrayal discovery had ultimately revealed truth not just about specific relationship deception, but about deeper authenticity requirements often overlooked in conventional relationship narratives. The experience had forced fundamental reconsideration of connection prerequisites, moving beyond romantic intensity or compatibility metrics to prioritize integration, transparency, and demonstrated consistency as essential relationship foundations. In strange way, discovering the matching tattoos that revealed their betrayal ultimately directed me toward more authentic connection than I might have otherwise experienced, I reflected during conversation with David while watching our daughter play in backyard garden we'd created together. Not because betrayal itself offered benefit, but because recovery process demanded developing discernment I hadn't previously recognized as necessary. The observation contained neither toxic positivity suggesting trauma, represented disguised blessing, nor bitter cynicism, viewing all relationships through betrayal lens. Instead, it acknowledged complex reality, profound violation that caused immeasurable harm and recovery process that generated unexpected growth through necessity rather than preference. As Sophia grew, occasionally asking innocent questions about mommy's life before daddy or why some families had different arrangements than others, I developed age-appropriate responses, balancing honest acknowledgement with appropriate boundary establishment. These conversations highlighted perhaps most significant wisdom developed through betrayal recovery, capacity to integrate challenging experiences into continuing narrative without allowing them to dominate identity or relationship approach. 7 years after discovery, marking period when healing integration had exceeded traumatic experience duration, I received unexpected email from Ryan containing information about potential health concern related to his family medical history. The communication maintained appropriate boundaries, relevant information provided without emotional manipulation or relationship reconsideration suggestion. My response reflected similar balance, acknowledgement and gratitude for health information without engagement beyond necessary exchange. The interaction demonstrated sophisticated healing integration, rather than either resentment perpetuation or boundary violation acceptance, capacity to navigate limited communication serving specific purpose without triggering significant emotional disruption. The matching tattoos that had revealed elaborate betrayal had permanently marked Ryan and Emily's bodies, visible symbols of secret connection maintained at my expense. But the experience had marked me too, invisible but equally indelible imprints on trust capacity, relationship expectations, and self-understanding. The difference lay in meaning assigned to these markings, limitation definitions or growth indicators, permanent damage or transformation catalysts. I had ultimately chosen integration path, incorporating painful experience into continuing narrative without allowing it to constitute primary identity component or dominant relationship approach. Not because betrayal itself offered hidden value, but because recovery process revealed capacity for resilience, discernment, and authentic connection, despite profound violation experience. The wisdom gained through this challenging journey extended beyond individual healing to inform how I understood relationships across multiple dimensions: professional collaborations, friendships, family connections, and romantic partnerships, all viewed through lens prioritizing integration, transparency, and demonstrated consistency rather than simply emotional intensity or conventional milestone achievement. Most importantly, the experience had transformed understanding of trust itself, replacing binary approach, completely trustworthy or categorically suspicious, with sophisticated discernment based on demonstrated reliability across various contexts and circumstances. This nuanced perspective allowed appropriate vulnerability without naive exposure, balanced approach supporting authentic connection without requiring either complete self-protection or unconditional acceptance. The matching tattoos that had revealed elaborate betrayal had also inadvertently revealed deeper truth about relationship authenticity requirements often overlooked in conventional narratives. The wisdom emerging through this challenging journey ultimately created capacity for more meaningful connection than might have developed without forced reconsideration, catalyzed by painful discovery. Not because betrayal offered benefit, but because recovery process revealed understanding previously obscured by comfortable assumptions and unchallenged expectations. TLDR, I discovered my husband and best friend were having a 2-year affair when I noticed they had identical crescent moon birthmarks on their shoulders that turned out to be matching tattoos they'd gotten together. My investigation revealed they'd been secretly meeting whenever I traveled for work and had even slept together in our bed. Through therapy and rebuilding my life, I've learned profound lessons about trust and authenticity. 7 years later, I'm remarried with a daughter and understand that while the betrayal caused immense pain, the recovery journey taught me to build relationships based on genuine transparency rather than blind trust. Edit. Many have asked if I maintained contact with either of them. No, I have a strict no-contact policy with Emily. With Ryan, we only communicate when absolutely necessary, like when he shared important medical history information that might affect me. And for those wondering about the crescent moon symbol, apparently the tattoo artist suggested it based on a Game of Thrones reference about being each other's moon, reflecting light even when the other couldn't see it. The irony of them permanently marking their bodies with a symbol of their deception is something I still find difficult to process. Update, 7 years later. Life has completely transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark early days. I'm married to a wonderful man who understands the importance of transparency, and we have a beautiful daughter. I've advanced in my career and built a home that truly reflects who I am. The most surprising outcome is my relationship with trust. I've developed a much more nuanced understanding that allows for genuine connection without blind faith. The betrayal will always be part of my story, but it no longer defines me or controls how I approach relationships.